around the plans to import cocoa beans from Nigeria. We'll hear from Cocoa Board. And later on Eyewitness News, police arrest 71 suspects in a swoop following an attack on police personnel by residents of Kweu Bipong in the eastern region. Stay with Eyewitness News on 97.3 Citi FM for more on this and many other stories. And in business
community pushes for deepened efforts to expedite country's industrialization drive.
That's from the Citi Business Desk in 50 minutes. The show is live across Ghana on a number of affiliate stations, and we are also on YouTube. We are on Twitter, which is now known as X. We are on citinewsroom.com. If you want to know how to listen to Eyewitness News outside Accra, let me give you a list of stations that bring you this broadcast. So in the Upper West region, we are on Tumpani Radio 88.5 in Nadoli. We are also in Jirapa on Jirapa 96.1 FM. In the Upper East region, we are on Rekas 92.1 FM in Bongo, Namo. In the Northern region, we are on North Star Radio 92.1 in Tamale. In Northeast, we are on Nobia 98.1 FM in Nalerigo. In the Western region, we are on Beach 105.5 FM in Takrady, as well as Sky Power 93.5 FM also in Takrady. In the Ashanti region, we are on Focus 94.3 on the campus of KNUST in Kumasi. We are also on Orange 107.9 FM in Kumasi. If you go to the Volta region, we are live on Sela Radio 97.1 FM in Dabala. We are on Holy 98.5 FM in Aflau. And in Savannah region, we are on Kasha 99.5 FM in Damongo. Let's know what your views are. Send us messages 0549 986 996 0549 986 996. Let's start off with the district level governance, or the municipal district chief executives were fired by the president on 2nd February 2024. The president released or issued a statement, a letter addressed to the minister for local government, inviting him to act accordingly. And I'm looking at the list of persons we have here. I'll be mentioning them so you know who has been fired and who has been hired. But let me introduce my guest on the line. The Honorable Obi Amwa. He is Minister of State at the Local Government Ministry. Honorable, you're welcome to Eyewitness News.
Thank you, my good friend.
It's been a while. I hope you are doing well.
You have new friends, so you've abandoned me.
It's not my fault. Seasons change, so it's not your season anymore. That's why.
I'm no more marketable.
No. Right now, you're nobody. You're Bob No Rank, to quote Katie Hammond. Anyway, I'm grateful you've joined us. I would crave your indulgence to just read the list for people who may not know who are the DCs affected before I speak to you. If you don't mind, just be on the line for me. Thank you. So the president's letter says, in accordance with Article 2433 of the Constitution and Section 23 of the Local Government Act 2014, I write to inform you that I have revoked the appointment of the following persons as district chief executives: Martina Apia Nyantichi for Ahafuano North, Ni Late Olenu Amansie West, Daniel Oredu Nkranza South, Alaji Abdullahi Adams Pru East, Basombe Jerome Kofi Jima Sene East, Joseph Eidu Awutu Senya West, Samuel Kwame Jekum Eswojaman, Seth Asante Etiwa West, Comfort Asante New Joabin North, Isaac Kojo Boabin Nsawam Edwejri, Daniel Alexander Ni Noi Edumwa Adentan, Mohammed Bashiru Kamara Gan Central, Elizabeth Kaki Man Gan East, Patrick Kwesi Brakun Kumo Wejagbawe, Rashida Mahama East Mamprusi, Emmanuel Jalula Kajao Krachi West, Lenwa Bright Kwame Nkwanta South, Lozina Barkisu Sola Tuna Kalba, David Akologo Amwa Bolga East, Tahiru Isaku Ahmed Boko West, Aisha Baton Ho Sisala West, Seth Kwesi Agbi South Town, Patrick Hodgson Ampontain Amenfi Central, and Dorcas Elizabeth Amwa Nzima East. I will respectfully request that you give immediate effect to my directive, addressed to the Honorable Damboche, Minister for Local Government and also MP. So the Honorable Obi Amwa, you are at the same ministry with Honorable Kweku Boche there. First of all, we do know that President has a prerogative of hiring and firing, but to just suddenly announce a list of all these MMDCs who are being fired is raising eyebrows. Give us an assurance that all is well at the local government level for you.
Well, thank you so much. As you have quoted, under Article 243, specifically 2432, chief executive may resign or may die, may be removed from the office by the president, or a vote of no confidence may be passed in him by 2/3 of the members of the assembly. So there are various situations where a chief executive may leave his office. In this case, the president has decided that some of them have served him for 7 years, some fewer than the 7 years. He thinks it's enough for them to be replaced, and that's what he's done. As to whether all is very well, we all serve at the pleasure of the president. And once he decides that we've served him enough, somebody else should continue. It's like a football match. You have those on the bench, you have those playing. If the coach decides that probably you could do well, but somebody else can do better, the coach will decide to bring on somebody who can deliver.
But the timing, though, this is the 11th hour in the government. Do you not need stability at the local level? Because, first of all, these nominees would have to go through series of affirmation or confirmation processes. And we've seen in the past where there are persons who've gone at least 3 times. And we know the consequence of going a number of times, what that means. We need stability at the local level, just like we have at the national level. If you are changing an MMDC at this time, would that not affect development there?
Well, you're more or less asking me the reason why the president has taken a decision. I'm not in a position to give you the reason. And if you talk about timing, it depends on what you mean by timing. Because if we had lost the person, we would still have replaced him. If he had resigned, he would have been replaced. And if the president thinks that this is the time for another person to take over, that is how it should go. And except that, of course, we have to go through the process. It has to be approved by 2/3 of members of the assembly, present and voting. That's what the Constitution says. We'll go through the process. We've been going through the process every time, and we have to do it this time too. As to whether to take S months, we are very sure that it will not take S months, because consultation have been done, and all things being equal, the new ones will pick over very soon.
I see. The rumors in town are that, too, these persons were either doing anti-Bawumia agenda or anti-parliamentary candidate agenda. Is that something that has come to your attention?
Well, this morning I read the Honorable Minister Dambuche responding to this issue, and his answer was for us to just go for how the Vice President performed in the various districts before we can make that argument. In any case, it has no basis at all. Otherwise, you stretch it and say that there are some places where probably the MCs or MMDCs did not campaign for Vice President Bawumia, but they are still in office. So I don't think that should be the case. As to whether they had problems with their members of parliament, it depends on the president's discretion as to whether such a person should still serve or let somebody else take over.
Now, I do know that the president appoints and he's the one who revokes the appointment too, but do presidents really know all MMDCs that serve in his government? Is this not usually left to the party at the grassroots? And for which reason we can say that if the party represented by the parliamentary candidate is not happy with an MMDCE, they will be out of the government based on our advice to the president? Is that something that holds?
The president is advised by various stakeholders. And if you look at our structure, at the regional level, the MMDCs work with the regional ministers. Of course, the regional ministers will have input as to how such persons are performing. And even traditional authorities are also in the assembly. So various stakeholders comprise the assembly, and then various personalities are involved in supervising these MMDCs. So if for any reason the president has enough information that such a person is not performing to his expected level, that person may have to leave.
These persons who have been asked to hand over their jobs, is it with immediate effect?
Well, administratively, if the place is vacant, the coordinating director takes over until a new person is appointed. So all things being equal, it means that if you have anything to do, you have to hand over to the coordinating director. And once a new person has been announced, you have to go through the process for such a person to take over.
We have seen the president's list of new persons already. So that means that these MMDCs who were fired on Friday, should they have gone to work today, for instance?
Well, I mean, practically, you may go to work just to hand over to the coordinating director. That I have been informed, or even somehow they may wait for the minister's letter, because the minister will write to them formally that the president has instructed that you leave office.
I see.
And then once they've heard that they've been asked to leave, they will make arrangements to leave. So today we expect some to have gone to the office to hand over to the coordinating director. Some may have excuses that I'm out of town, I'm indisposed, give me up to maybe the next 48 hours, I should be able to hand over and then move on.
I see. Since I have not spoken to you in a while, please indulge me. Let me just ask a few more questions that may not be directly related to this. What would be your own verdict on your government's performance at the local level, having been a minister and deputy at the Ministry for Local Government all these 7 years of the Akufo-Addo government?
No, that is a whole subject that we need time to discuss. And I wish I would be in your studio for us to discuss.
No problem.
See the kind of fantastic work that we've done. I mean, I'll show you records, facts and figures, for you to conclude that indeed we have something to show on the ground. We may have our own challenges. People complain about sanitation, some other things, but a lot has been done. A lot more will be done. For instance, if you talk about development, we've done a lot, and we've invested so much. We are still investing to make sure that these districts are well developed. We are now focusing more on even local economic development, and it's going very well. We are pushing that becomes the paradigm for our local governance.
What about the new regions? Have they served the purpose for which they were created, you reckon?
Certainly, it's decentralization. So if you bring governance to the local level, it helps the people. And as you might have noticed, if you have your team which has gone around, you find out that for the new regions, a lot of developments are going on. Regional hospitals, regional police commands, or everything regional for these ones that are created. And that is getting the governance closer to the people. If, for instance, you had a big northern region, and now you divide it, and then they all have their regions and then districts within the regions, obviously, that's sending development to the people.
You are a veteran at the Inter-Party Advisory Committee, IPAC. A number of issues have come up the past few days about voting in November and the issue of how the guarantor system should be scrapped and all of that. I don't know if you've been to IPAC in recent days, but this vexed issue of voting.
The last 2 weeks, we've had 2 meetings at IPAC. I was present at both meetings.
Great. The issue of voting in November, in the past, when the subject came up, at the time the NDC was in power, they lost the motion in Parliament. Now that this proposal has come up again, do you stand by your position at the time in opposing this November election, or you now agree with voting in November?
Well, if you were to have the opportunity to read the minutes of our IPAC meeting, what I said is exactly what I said in 2016 on the floor, which is captured in the Hands Act. We said, ideally, we should be able to have our elections in November because of the transition time and everything. If you remember very well, in 2008, we had to go to time. And President Kufuor had just a few days to be able to hand over, not properly and officially. And we wish probably we could have these elections earlier, probably a day in November. But the point I made at that time was that is on condition that EC is ready. As at that time, we were able to show that the EC was not ready. And if we were to insist on doing our elections in November, we will have problems. At the end of the day, the second reading could not gather the two-thirds majority required for us to move on to constitution stage. So at IPAC, I made the same point that we need to have, one, the parliamentary calendar, two, the EC's own timetable, three, the assurance that everything will be ready before December or before November that they are proposing. If not, they may end up in the same situation that we ended up in 2016. So I disputed the idea that why not 2028? If possible, if we could even pass it in 2024, it should take effect in 2028. Others too said, if it's 2028, then let's wait after elections and start early enough that everybody will be aware that in 2028, the elections will be in November. That's how we concluded. So my party, we are not stuck to any situation, November or no elections, or December or no elections. No, not at all. We look at the practical issues and we're saying that if you want us to support this, we have to be assured that the EC is ready and prepared, given its timetable.
I interviewed Professor Jampo the last time. Not Jampo, forgive me, Professor Electoral Commission, Bosman Asari.
Bosman,
yes. And he said to me that they put the issue before you, and even though there was an agreement generally that we could have it in 2028, there was also an agreement that if EC put its acts together, you could have it this year. And so they were going to proceed with voting in November this year, which means bringing the legislation and all of that to you. The sense he got was that they had the all clear to proceed. Do you get a sense that they can proceed?
Well, that is his interpretation. But the point that I made is the fact that you need consensus. No party has to test in Parliament. So if our colleagues from the NDC think otherwise, the bill will fail. Because we MPP, we don't have to test to say that if anything doesn't agree, then we'll go ahead with the second reading and the constitution stage and third reading and pass it. So even though some of the other parties were saying that if you look at the submissions, then obviously more people preferred November. So why not go ahead? My point was that, fine, you are PNC, you are LPG, you made a submission, you said yes. When it comes to constituting the bill, it's the two major parties. So if one side doesn't agree, the whole thing will stop. And according to the NDC, they think this year is not appropriate. So we should move on. If worst case scenario, if you're able to convince them I should start in 2028, but I want to do it now, so be it. But they have shown that they are not really interested in 2024.
So you wouldn't push your luck, would you?
It's not about luck.
Because he gave me the indication that they were going to proceed. I mean, he thought that they could make it.
If they proceed, unless something dramatic happens, it would mean that even if on the MPP side we think we can go ahead, we don't have the two tests. It's as simple as that. In which case, it will be a size in futility. Because in 2016, the same thing happened. 2016, the EC, the Attorney General brought a bill. When they got to the second reading after the submission by the committee, we made cogent arguments as to why November would not be suitable, and that it was risky going ahead to pass it in November when the EC said was not ready. At the end of the day, two tests could not be gathered, and the whole thing had to be abandoned.
The NDC lists a number of reasons it believes is not practical this year. For instance, the calendar is not out, registration has not happened, all of those things. And so it believes that the EC wouldn't have the time to even bring the election to November. But Professor Bosman gave me the indication that they were going to issue the calendar at least this week, and they were very certain that they had the capacity to go ahead. Do you think they can, based on your knowledge of our elections in the past, that if calendar is not out as of now, in February, an EC can still go ahead and conduct elections in November?
Well, you have to know the process. It's an amendment of the Constitution. This is not an intent, it's a non-intent provision in the Constitution. In which case, you have to go through the process. You gazette it for the number of days that is required. Then it goes to Council of State for advice. It is referred to the Committee, Parliamentary, Legal and Constitutional Affairs. And they bring their report for second reading, at which stage we then debate on the principles and vote on it. If you don't get it to test, that's the end of the matter. So the EC being ready or not, we also require that Parliament gives them the go-ahead. So if you bring it, I reminded them that if you look at our parliamentary calendar, we are resuming tomorrow. We are going back to Parliament tomorrow. We will stay till the Easter break, depending on when it's Easter. And then we come back. When we come back, we go back probably in August. And then come back probably in October for a few days and go and campaign for the election. So if you don't also look at our calendar and say you are ready, it also depends on the process that the bill has to go through and how Parliament will also speed up the matter. That is why some are saying that if you want more time, bring it quite earlier. If it were to be 2023, then Parliament will have all the time, and then eventually, maybe by the end of 2023, early 2024, it's passed, and everybody knows. Meanwhile, you should also know that some of the parties were opposed to it because they themselves were not ready with their calendar. Ready with their calendar in the sense that the big parties, we've done our primaries, presidential, parliamentary, and then we are moving on. Some of the smaller parties, we are now even starting probably their constituency or regional elections. And they know definitely if we were to bring it earlier, we may be even caught in a certain situation. So all those things are perceived to counted in how this whole thing went. And for the NDC, they think this is not the time. And it more or less satisfies the matter that probably we can go ahead with it.
Very well. Finally, why have you decided to quit Parliament?
Well, maybe quitting fair, we may say so, but at the end of the year, I would have spent 16 years in Parliament. 4 terms, 2 terms in opposition, 2 terms in power. I'm no more a young man, the young man that you knew. So sometimes you think that you should move on. Some are ready to spend more than the 4 terms. Some of us do think that the job is a very difficult job and probably we should move on for others to take over.
What is your reason for wanting to? Are you tired? You have other engagements you need to go and take care of? Are you frustrated by the whole campaigning process that you have to spend money? Are you frustrated by the clinics you run where you are giving money for funerals, for marriage, for outdooring? Which one is the biggest one for you?
No, not at all. I mean, you go in and you want to be a member of Parliament and you should know what it entails. And when you've done it for some time, you think that you want to move on. It's just like any job. As I said, I'm not going any younger. If I were to be in public service, I would have retired. I'm not a young man anymore. I'm 63 years old. And if I feel that if I were to be at the Internal Revenue Service where I started and stayed for 10 years, I would have reached my retirement age. And short of giving me a contract, that would have been the end of my service. And for the parliamentary thing, it's quite hectic. That's the word I can use. It's very hectic. And if you have the energy for more than 4 terms, you are blessed. If some go 2 terms, they say they won't go again. And I've managed 4 terms, so I give glory to God. And I move on. There are other things that I can do. I wish I have more time for giving lectures, more time for writing books, more time for seminars, and then having discussions like this with you. I have a lot that I have experience on the job, and I have a lot that I can share. And probably that's where I have to be concentrating on.
But we need your knowledge and expertise and experience in the House, don't you think?
Of course, but some will have to go and some will replace them. I replaced others. When I entered Parliament in 2009, fortunately for me, I had served in government, so probably I had a certain kind of experience. Others come in with their professional background. They come and do very well. So You don't have to say that you need to stay there for 20 or 24 years. Some are able to do that, and some, we appreciate them very much. They become more or less our standard, but others too, they get to the end of the road quite early. And having done 16 years, if God permits, by the end of this year, I think I would have done enough.
I see. But it sounds as if your decision to quit was an afterthought. You had gone through interview and everything. Then 2 days to election, you told us you were no more interested. The rumor is that you were doing it to mafia your municipal chief executive, and now
that word I just still exists.
They use it in the communist countries. So mafia is so normal.
We are not in the communist world.
But they said you were trying to
constitutional world.
You're trying to prevent your MCE from succeeding you, and so that's why you waited to last minute to throw in the towel.
It takes situation to build consensus. That's what I would say. Probably the consensus hadn't been built, but if I leave and there are 3 other persons still in the race, so be it. I didn't leave for anybody to have any advantage. And I wish at the appropriate time we have time to talk about this. But because the party is still discussing this and taking decisions, I don't want us to talk so much until things are concluded. Probably after the primary.
Very well. That's fine. I wish you all the best. Your friend, Professor Ransford Jampo, sends his regards. He just sent a message. He said you are such a fine gentleman.
The Jampo I've been listening to him, and it's become more interesting, as usual. I used to debate him on radio, and I used to tease him that we should go for a seat so that he gets the practical aspect of our parliamentary work. But it's not everybody who wants to go to parliament, so we take it that way. My regards to him. I'm sure one of these days we'll end up in the studio.
Very well. Thank you so much, sir, for speaking to us, and wish you all the best.
Take care.
That's Honorable Obi Amwa. He's Minister of State at the Local Government Ministry, and he's also MP for the area that Ebri is part of as a constituency. This is Eyewitness News on 97.3 Citi FM. We are coming to you from our studios in Adabraka, in Accra. We have more coming your way. Please stay with us.
Eyewitness News. Be there as it happens.
The wait is over. It's the Clash of Titans. The Total Energies African Cup of Nations Côte d'Ivoire 2023 is here. And as part of this year's competition, all Total Energy service stations will go into 100% football mode. So drive to selected service stations and kickstart your year with lots of amazing giveaways. So starting Sunday 14th January, when you buy fuel or lubricants on selected match days from selected Total Energy service stations, you instantly win amazing branded souvenirs. Let's celebrate the passion of football together and win lots of gifts during the 2023 Total Energies African Cup of Nations. Remember, promo is valid while stocks last. Visit our social media pages Total Energies GH for more information. Terms and conditions apply. Let's live football together.
Media Sambisanda Moa. Etiamratiano, Mumu Panet, Mufinam Podompe, Mumana Yakono.
Hey, Quabna.
Hey, no Mumu wants to me just Mali Marina there.
Hey, good job.
And the crew, complete Murinam Podompe, so you super excellent Eba. I didn't have Bany de Braille, who see it in a mobile, some man are ordering.
Sir, I
need Nakujon soon you super excellent Chaco, Nenry dear, a mouse, who you could fit of that. No, what you ask you, my mother feel you.
Hey, Kojo, sir.
Yeah. Pepsodent Eba and a Pepsodent Chaco. A baby, you're gonna natural.
FDIJ Jadian Katuyatu.
Let your voice be heard on Eyewitness News on Facebook at facebook.com/Citi97.3, Twitter at twitter.com/Citi973, and Instagram at instagram.com/Citi973 with the hashtag Eyewitness News.
You're welcome back. Now, the Coast South Municipal Security Council has ordered the closure of schools in the Kwel Bepon following yesterday's shooting incident, which resulted in the death of 2 people. 71 persons have so far been arrested as police intensify patrols in the area. Citi News understands the decision to close all schools is due to fears of reprisal attacks which may cause harm to school children in the community. The youth have abandoned the town for fear of being picked up by the police. Emmanuel Oforiata is the Kwo South Municipal Chief Executive.
My name is Education Director.
Following the incidents that occurred yesterday, my education director and I have decided to close down both basic and senior high schools for a day until matters are resolved.
The MC who condemned the unfortunate incident says MUSEC is meeting to find lasting solutions to the current disturbances and the tension in the area.
What has happened here is very unpleasant. I would urge the people of this community to cooperate with the police because they are our friends. So let's all exercise patience as we engage with security persons on this matter. Currently, we have a lot of policemen on ground as well to ensure maximum safety.
That was the Municipal Chief Executive for Kwo South in the Eastern Region, Emmanuel Oforiata. Now, a victim who sustained gunshot wounds and has been treated and discharged also shared her ordeal with the media.
I was standing in front of our shop when the police began firing shots. I was hit by a bullet. Those of us who sustained gunshot wounds were 5 in number. One of the girls died when we got to the hospital.
He had a resident of Kwo who sustained gunshot wounds.
This Eyewitness News on 97.3 Citi FM. Let's go to the region and speak to the head of the Regional Security Council, Minister for the Eastern Region, Honorable Seth Kwame Echampong. He's joining us on the line. Sir, you're welcome to Eyewitness News.
Thank you. How are you?
I'm well. Hope everything is fine.
We're managing well.
Except in Bipong, of course. Things are not looking that good. What happened over the weekend? The story that's coming through is that there was an attack on police personnel and police vehicles. What do you know officially so far?
We had an allegation that there's been a murder within the community, and so police was on the manhunt. And out of the manhunt, we got news that the culprit was apprehended by the town folk and sent to the palace, the chief's palace. And I think it delayed in subjecting the culprit to the proper channels of law by handing him over to the police. Unfortunately, that incident caused a misunderstanding. Police came in, they helped restore calm, and unfortunately, again, held broke loose. But as we speak, there is calm. The community has seen some peace now, and we are working at it to ensure that normalcy returns.
Now, did they burn a police vehicle? We are hearing rumors like that.
What I have seen, images I've seen, and the allegations are that they damaged the police vehicle. That means property was damaged. That is a criminal act. And so we're going around looking for the culprit. Some have already been picked as suspects. We have deployed more police personnel into the community because there's some level of fear and panic due to the presence of security personnel in the community. But it is all to help us at least sanitize the environment and get all the bad nuts out so that the peace-loving and peaceful members of the community will be able to go about their duties freely without any fear.
Does the community have a history with the police in similar fashion?
There's some level of allegations that people sometimes offer certain comments to that effect. However, I don't have any substantial evidence to buttress that. My only hope is that we will use this as a test case to ensure that nobody takes the law into their hands. We are a country governed by the rule of law, and all of us must be law abiding. And so, if anybody takes the law into their hands, they will face the consequence. Therefore, so we are doing our best to ensure that we have schools reopened, because from the happening, some members of the school management are affected, and some parents are also concerned, and they are not willing to allow their wards to go to school. So we are holding down school. That was I'm sure you definitely might have heard from the municipal chief executive discuss that. The matter which, upon consultation, was arrived that all those things and activities must be on hold for a while. But I'm sure, looking at the way we are responding to the matter, by Wednesday they should return to school.
I see, but are community members safe? Are the police also safe?
For now, report reaching me from the regional police command, the regional police command, as well as the municipal police command, there is peace.
There is peace. Is there a need for any curfew, or that would be extreme?
Oh, that would be extreme. It is not a community which is up in arms against itself. I suspect there was some misunderstanding along the line, and that led into the breakdown of law and order. But since we doubled up on the deployment and they started engaging the community and getting community members to appreciate that they are there not to harass or intimidate any person, but rather help to restore stability, to restore peace and harmony in the community. We are very much hopeful and assured that within the next 48 hours, everything is calm. Even as we speak, the community is calm, but it is so early for anybody to just jump out and say so. So we are just giving ourselves some time to monitor the situation before we finally report.
So you're hopeful that school children will return by Wednesday. Are there other offices or institutions that you've had to shut down as a result?
Not fully shut down, but some personnel were off, let's say, the health sector. There are some health centers in the community. So basically, when it occurred, some had to leave town. But we are giving all the necessary assurances that if there be any emergency, we have the TPA Government Hospital, which is just about 5 minutes drive away from the town, to arrive, and we will be able to take care of all the needs of the community as we speak.
Thank you so much for speaking to us, sir.
An absolute pleasure, my brother.
That's Honorable Seth Kwame Champon. He's the Eastern Regional Minister. This is Eyewitness News on 97.3 Citi FM. We have more reactions to that story in Akwewu Bepon. Hawa.
The Bureau of Public Safety has condemned the attack on police officers by some residents of Bepon in the Eastern region. The Research and Advocacy Director at the Bureau, Etonam Koda, says although the action of the residents is unacceptable, the police service ought to institute measures that would boost public confidence in the institution.
A few cases might have occurred, which has been reported, and they still not had finality to the case. So you realize that it's all about how such cases are brought to a complete end. So, like I said, it's very condemnable, but as a result of so many factors which I have outlined, so which may be localized, and so we think that we may be having one or two cases which are still pending. We've not seen the end to it. So, trying to take the laws into our own hands, which is not advisable in any way. So probably the police also has some work to do. We also think that duty bearers or community, the chiefs and the people, they also have some education to do, because irrespective of whatever is case. We've had cases that are taking even 10 or 20 years before it is brought to finality. So it is unacceptable. Some education needs to be done to assure the public that, issues reported to the police will be dealt with the immediate attention.
We heard the Research and Advocacy Director at the Bureau of Public Safety, Etonam Koda. Organised Labour has maintained its decision to protest the introduction of the 15% VAT on electricity despite media reports on a possible withdrawal of the policy by government. The labour unions have scheduled a meeting for demonstration for February 13 over the issue. Deputy Secretary General of the Trades Union Congress, Joshua Ansah, while emphasizing the potential detriment of the controversial tax on the livelihoods of its members, explained they will only rescind their decision if government engages them officially on the purported withdrawal.
We have not received any official communication from the government on that. We all saw it on the social media and the paper. So we think that the right thing has to be done, and official communication should be waiting to us. Then we will also reconvene to actually take a decision on the demonstration, on the topic of the demonstration. But as of now, once there's no official communication, it's like certain official has been done, and our plan action is still on course. Because you gave an ultimatum of the 31st of January, that has already elapsed, and we met again on the 2nd of this month, and we said that we are giving government up to the 12th of this month, and if nothing is done, then on the 13th, there will be a nationwide demonstration in all the 16 regions of the country. And that if that plan also doesn't go well, then it will be followed by an industrial action.
That was the Deputy Secretary General of the Trades Union Congress, Joshua Ansah. Meanwhile, members of organised labour in the Ashanti region are set to hold a meeting on Tuesday to finalise routes for the February 13 protest against the imposition of the 15% VAT on electricity. Ashanti Regional Industrial Relations Officer of the General Transport, Petroleum and Chemical Workers Union, Paul Kofi Edu, says members remain unified in their actions.
Our leadership have expressed our displeasure on this 15% VAT on electricity. And as workers, we believe that it is going to further worsen the plight of the workers as we are. And by that, we still stand by, or we are still gearing up to the demands of our leaders. So we are on course, and we haven't given up until maybe we have a positive reaction from those in the helm of affairs. We are looking up to the date set for ourselves. If by that time we've not had, like I said, a positive reaction from those at the helm of affairs, we will certainly carry out our agenda.
Paul Kofi Edu is the Ashanti Regional Industrial Relations Officer of the General Transport, Petroleum and Chemical Workers Union. Now, former President and flag bearer of the NDC, John Dramani Mahama, has assured that his government will address the economic challenges confronting the country. The flag bearer of the National Democratic Congress says the Nanado administration has plunged the country into difficulties that require a strong recovery by the NDC. John Mahama was speaking at the Bewa Palace in Yendi, where he paid a courtesy call on the overlord of Dagbon, Yana Abubakar Mahama II.
Today, our country, Ghana, is in crisis, and we all know the hardship and the pain and suffering that our people are going through. And so the election of 2024 this year is one of the most crucial elections in the history of Ghana. We need a competent government. We need a selfless government. We need an honest government. We need a truthful government that will come and lead Ghana out of the mess into which it has been thrown by the Akufo-Addo and Bawumia government. And I'm confident that NDC has the men and women to turn our fortunes around and make Ghana stand back on its feet.
Former President and flag bearer of the NDC, John Dramani Mahama.
This is Eyewitness News on 97.3 Citi FM. We are coming to you from our studios in Adabraka in Accra. There's this report making the rounds that Ghana is planning to import cocoa from Nigeria. This has got social media talking all over the weekend. So let's understand what exactly the situation is. Fifi Boafo is the head of corporate communications at Cocoa Board. He's joining us on the line. So you're welcome to Eyewitness News.
Thank you, Sanda.
What is this story that you have granted permission for, and the letter is signed by your CEO, for a company to go importing cocoa beans into Ghana? Is it that we don't have cocoa anymore?
No, that's not the case. What it is that there are a number of cocoa processing factories that are set up within the Free Zones enclave in Ghana who process cocoa. And these companies sometimes require permission from Cocoa Board to import cocoa and blend it with the Ghanaian cocoa beans for export. So it's not a case that there's no cocoa in Ghana. It is a case of the company blending the cocoa they import from outside with a Ghanaian cocoa to, one, get the required recipes of these companies, and two, also to manage costs. I say manage costs because, Ghana produces the best quality cocoa in the world, and it's a premium cocoa. Some of these countries, the quality of cocoa they produce is not at the same level as that of Ghana. So what usually happens is that it is less premium, and you are able to procure it at a lesser cost. So when you have the Ghana cocoa, which is of the highest premium, you blend it, the cost is down. So they are able to do that and then export it. So that's basically what it is.
So if I understood you clearly, we have high quality cocoa, then we go and bring low quality cocoa mixed with ours and export. Is that what we do?
Okay, it's not all the time. There are times they do that. So most of the companies, what they do is that they buy what we refer to as the light crop beans, the smaller beans, which Ghana discounts for all processing factories in Ghana. So in an instance where you do not have available the light crop beans, which is discounted, the preference would be for the company to bring in cocoa from other places, because it is either you buy the cocoa from other places to blend, or you buy the main crop beans, which is more expensive locally. So the option is for the company then to go out and then import that beans and then blend with what they buy from Ghana. Let me quickly say that this process or this arrangement is nothing new. It's an arrangement that has existed since 2001, and the companies do bring in the cocoa to process. It is also a case that it does not mean that the cocoa we produce in Ghana is not sold. The cocoa produced in Ghana is sold. The local process by cocoa produced in Ghana, and they will also sell to companies outside Ghana. Indeed, from 2017 up to date, we've increased local processing of our cocoa from about 23% to 40%. So the cocoa produced in Ghana, about 40% is processed locally. So when you have a situation where a company is requesting to import beans in Ghana and then blend with what they have from Ghana, it is not a novelty, it's not a new thing. There's nothing illegal about it. In fact, the sales and purchase agreement they have signed, or the bean purchase agreement they have signed on board, permits them to do so. And it's an arrangement that does not in any way affect our business as a cocoa producing country.
My difficulty is that when they bring in let me use the word low quality cocoa from Nigeria or any other country and blend it with ours, it reduces the potency of the cocoa beans they are exporting from Ghana, and that makes our record not as healthy as we would wish it to be, that we are the leading producer of not just cocoa, but the best cocoa in the world. Why do we devalue our cocoa to export and make our records look bad?
Okay, so don't get it mixed up and conclude on that. When they bring it in, they do not export Ghana beans. What they rather export is liquor, butter, and cake. With liquor, butter, and cake, you don't brand liquor, butter, and cake as Ghana cocoa beans.
It is liquor, or it is butter, or it is cake, or it is powder. So it is not exported as Ghana beans. It is different when you are exporting. And what you need to know is that most of these companies have their factories in Europe, in America, and in Asia. When they buy the beans from Ghana and they export it to these countries, it is not the full Ghana, just the Ghana beans they process. They process it together with beans from other countries. They have their own recipes they have developed. And then they know the quantities of beans from Ghana, for example, or beans from Ecuador, or beans from Cote d'Ivoire to mix it to get the required recipes they are looking at. So the fact that they have mixed it in Ghana is not different from what they would do if they export the beans from Accra, or they export it from Tema, or they export one from Nigeria to, say, Brussels or to Amsterdam. There's no anything. It happens in the industry, except that this time around they are blending it in Ghana. If they don't blend it in Ghana, eventually when they take it to Brussels, that is what will happen. Or if they export it to Amsterdam, that is exactly what will happen.
If this low-grade cocoa is in so much of demand, why don't we let our farmers grow that here? So we have a collective, or we have both, high grade and low grade.
Sandra, this suggestion, this is the first time hearing it when the competition started. It is, for example, asking University of Ghana to train low-quality graduates, because you still find people who will employ low-quality graduates and pay them less. Whereas University of Ghana can still go ahead, train high-quality graduates, and the high-quality graduates will get employed. It is not to say that the high-quality cocoa beans are not being sold. They are being sold and they are being bought. So why do you want to rather go and produce low-quality beans? Bear in mind, average annual production is about 850,000 metric tons. What we are talking about is 2,300.
So it's insignificant.
I wouldn't say so, but then you can make that deduction.
Statistically. Okay, fine. You said that this is something that we've been doing since 2001. When was the last time we did this? Did we do this importation last year, the year before, for instance?
I will not be able to give you dates but then I can tell you that from 2005 up to this time, it's a lot of occurrence. They happen.
Very well. Thank you so much for speaking to us.
It's a pleasure.
That's Fifi Boafo. He's with the Cocoa Board. This is Eyewitness News on 97.3 Citi FM. On Point Blank, we have former Minister of Finance Setekbe as our guest. But before then, we have the latest in the world of business. Please stay with us.
Eyewitness News. Be there as it happens.
When you want to eat, just Momo it. Tired of the long queues in the supermarket? Pay with Momo. When you really want that beautiful new blouse, just Momo it. When you want to get a trim and get fresh to impress you know who, just Momo it. When you need to pay your utility bills and domestic staff, Shane Momo. When you want to send love to the family back home, send some Momo. Join the millions of MTN Momo users all over Ghana and live life the brighter way. So just Momo it. MTN.
The wait is over. It's the Clash of Titans. The Total Energies African Cup of Nations Côte d'Ivoire 2023 is here. And as part of this year's competition, all Total Energy service stations will go into 100% football mode. So drive to selected service stations and kickstart your year with lots of amazing giveaways. So starting Sunday 14th January, when you buy fuel or lubricants on selected match days from selected Total Energy service stations, you instantly win amazing branded souvenirs. Let's celebrate the passion of football together and win lots of gifts during the 2023 Total Energies African Cup of Nations. Remember, promo is valid while stocks last. Visit our social media pages Total Energies GH for more information. Terms and conditions apply. Let's live football together.
Eyewitness News. Be there as it happens. Get the details. Every significant financial transaction, every market movement, and all the policies that affect your business. Citi Business News. Be informed.
Time now for City Business News on Eyewitness News, brought to you by GCB Bank PLC. GCB Personal Loan, make that big move and dream a reality. My name is Hawa Idrisu Mustafa. Details of our stories now. The Ghana Union of Traders Association (GUTA) has reiterated the need for innovative strategies to expedite the country's industrialization drive. Stressing the importance of leveraging Ghana's agro-based economy, the association highlights the crucial role it plays in fostering sustainable economic development. Speaking during discussions at an economic forum held in Accra, the president of GUTA, Dr. Joseph Obin, underlined the urgency of collaborative effort to propel the nation towards industrial growth.
You know that we also have basis of industrialization in the form of what we have comparative advantage. And that's what I was dwelling on, that we should be able to identify those things that we have comparative advantage. If you look at the oil, the palm oil that we produce and all that, we can pack it well, produce it well and fund the market. And then it will also serve the basis of what Ghana have in terms of industrialization. And that's what I was talking about. And I was also talking about the workforce. The Ghanaian workforce, we need orientation so that they can, if there's industries, they can be employed and work positively. As it were now, we don't have labor force that is employable in our country. And it's obvious, and that we have to rearrange those things when we are talking about industrialization. Otherwise, the work done will be zero.
That was the president of GUTA, Dr. Joseph Obin. The chief executive of the Ghana Chamber of Commerce and Industry, Mark Badu Abuaje, is concerned about the growing weight of direct and indirect taxes on businesses in the country. Speaking to City Business News, he raised doubts about how businesses can stay profitable with rising costs and taxes. Mark Badu Abuaje believes that taxes are hindering the growth of businesses and questioned their sustainability.
In a government bid to generate revenue, the government is punishing people who have decided to set up a business just to employ people because they are not making money, but day in, day out, the government wants to take money from them, and it's not helping businesses. So the only way out is that once you impose a tax on any business, the businesses will have no option than to push this tax onto consumers, and we are likely to see prices going up, and our fight against inflation will not be achieved. So the taxes are not helping. They are making businesses uncompetitive. Cost of production, if we add electricity, if we add high interest rates, and then these taxes, we are pushing businesses out of competition. A lot of businesses are now collapsing. Some have relocated.
Mark Badu Abuaje is the chief executive of the Ghana Chamber of Commerce and Industry. Stakeholders within the cocoa sector have pointed out that the government stands to lose a substantial amount of revenue as a result of the move to import cocoa. Cocoa Board has indicated that the country is set to import 2,500 tons of cocoa beans from Cote d'Ivoire and 1,000 tons from Nigeria. However, the General Secretary of the General Agricultural Workers Union, Edward Kariwe, in an interview with City Business News, says this will not augur well for the country's economy.
The essence of our exports is to bring in foreign exchange. So if we are going to import cocoa, we need foreign exchange. The companies that have been permitted to import the cocoa will certainly need foreign exchange from Bank of Ghana to be able to import the cocoa. So certainly we are spending more foreign exchange to buy cocoa, and we're also losing more foreign exchange from our cocoa production through this smuggling of the cocoa to our neighboring country. So if you look at the combined effects of these developments, certainly the revenue to government will continue to decline. And that is why you can see that largely because of the challenges within the cocoa industry, the entire economy is also having a brunt of it. That is why we always wait for the syndicated loan to come to help stabilize our city in terms of foreign exchange and so on. So certainly current developments are going to affect national revenue.
That was the General Secretary of the General Agricultural Workers Union, Edward Kariwe, ending City Business News on Eyewitness News. The Business News on Eyewitness News is brought to you by GCB Bank PLC. GCB Personal Loan, make that big move and dream a reality. My name is Hawa Idrisu Mustafa. Up next is Point Blank.
Hello, Linda. You won't believe what I am planning next. I want to start my postgraduate degree, buy a car, and build my dream home. But you know what's stopping me?
What's that, Mike?
Money, oh. That'll be my biggest wahala.
Oh, you are sorted, Kra. With a GCB Big Move personal loan promo, you can borrow up to a whopping 400,000 Ghana cedis at a significantly reduced interest rate in less than 24 hours.
Like, seriously? How do I qualify?
Yes, it's available to all GCB salary account holders. Plus, you get a 2-month grace period before you start to pay back.
Susket, I'm opening an account with GCB now.
Get a personal loan of up to 400,000 Ghana cedis at a significantly reduced interest rate in less than 24 hours. Call 0800-422-422 or visit your nearest GCB branch today to fund your next big move as we celebrate 70 years of greatness. T's and C's apply. GCB Bank, your bank for life.
Eyewitness News. Be there as it happens.
Citi TV is live on DSTV, GoTV, and HD+. On DSTV, find us on channel 363. On GoTV, we're on channel 117, and on HD+, get us on channel 108. On a digital TV, run a new search, but take note that without an antenna, you cannot access Citi TV. Citi TV can be accessed on any free-to-air digital box like the GoTV and HD+ boxes. Citi TV, it's your world.
Do you care enough about your business? Then it's time to make a transition to renewable energy and energy efficiency solutions. Visit the AGI Energy Service Center and talk to us. AGI ESC cares about business growth. That is why we're here to assist industries cut production costs through energy savings. We provide you with solar feasibility studies, energy audits, energy efficiency trainings, and financial advisory services. Visit agiesc.com for more information or call us on 0507 977 902, an initiative of the Association of Ghana Industries in partnership with the German Development Corporation, implemented by GIZ.
Eyewitness News. Be there as it happens.
This is Point Blank on Eyewitness News. My name is Umaru Sandamado. Tonight on Point Blank, we are talking about the tax regime and the new taxes that have been imposed by the government and the justification and criticism of same. Tonight on Point Blank, my colleague Hansin Ajiman sat with former Minister of Finance Seth Tekbe to discuss these taxes and how the government should or should not have imposed them. So let's listen to that interview.
We have gone through 2 major periods of rationalizing our tax regime. When I say rationalize, what we mean is that what is the purpose of a particular tax instrument or handle? And if we define its purpose or handle, then is it duplicating another tax, or is another tax duplicating it, such that it is imposing excessive burden, distorting the tax regime, and frankly, encouraging taxpayers to, as we say, evade or avoid. During what we call the ERP SAPERA, we defined the pillars of our tax system, that are 4 tax instruments. And anything that duplicated them, right, or distorted them, that's where the rationalization came in. They were either dropped or they were subsumed into those taxes. The last one was VAT, for obvious reasons, if you know, yes. So the four are one. We have taxes on income, property, on the sale of property, where you capital gains and the rest, and you pay, tax on it, or property tax, which was reserved for what we call subnational governments, or in our case, the assemblies. Yes. The second one was the VAT. So the consumption tax, being a tax on consumer goods and services, right, became that the sales and service taxes became the consolidated VAT. So unless you were exempted, everybody pays the VAT. And this is a policy, one of the policy distortions. So when you take Get Fund and health insurance, which used to be treated like a VAT, and therefore businesses were getting their input tax credit, and you call them straight levies, and you block that input tax credit or refund, depending on which one is larger, then it means that the business rationale is to add it to cost, where previously they were not adding to cost.
In essence, the decoupling has increased the tax burden on businesses.
That is one of the major distortions of the VAT. And to add to that, when some of the levies that used to be part of the regime before they were subsumed into the VAT are being reintroduced as consumption taxes, e-levy, and all those things, then what it means, is that, you are, instead of subsuming that business under the VAT, so that the business that is rendering it will pay the tax on only the fee that they are charging for their services and get the input tax credit, you are treating it like a street levy. Then you had import duty. And as the name implies, it's on only imports, right? Which means that it plays a role of also protecting your local industry. The fourth pillar is excise duty. And excise duty is punitive. The purpose is punitive. So it is applied, one, on tobacco for health reasons, on alcoholic drinks for health reasons, right? And it is applied for environmental reasons, right? Which is the tax that we pay when we go to the pump. So you see where another duplication is coming. We already have an environmental tax. And that's the excise or special tax that you pay when you go to the pump, which also includes ESLA, which was supposed to have gone away. The excise duty on vehicles, apart from the petrol that we pay, the excise duty on vehicles that are imported into the country, right, is graduated. The older the vehicle, the more you pay. And it used to be that even, if the vehicle was 10 years, it was confiscated, which has now been changed into, a tax, another exceptional punitive tax. But why is the tax being imposed? Because the vehicle is older. If I bring a new vehicle, apart from capacity, because you are consuming more fuel, if it is old, it means the engine is weak. And it means that more emission.
So you mean that at the time that particular levy was promulgated, the thinking was to have something towards emissions, which now has become a separate.
You can see the rationale. That is it's damage to the environment from petroleum, right? So it's there.
Is it your case that the current government appears to have moved away from the rationalization of our tax regime to the extent that all the pillars for which our tax system were to protect, i.e. prevent duplication, to protect businesses and
by simplifying? Absolutely, because you can see that if you have a rational tax regime, you will have, 3 major taxes at imports. Sometimes customs withholds the 5% of the value in lieu of the taxes on income. That's the income tax that you should pay, which you can offset. That's a withholding tax, right? But you can also see, that the taxes that we're talking about were designed to meet that objective of simplifying the tax regime, both for the consumer and for customs. So where previously you would have 4, but let me explain, maybe 6 or 7, I'll come to that, taxes listed on your, today it's about 14 or 16. The people have been displaying it. Yeah. And so what you are doing is that
is if, for instance, you go to a restaurant to go and buy something, you are giving your bill, the tax components that are being spelled out.
Yes, because your environmental tax, you have, e-levy, you have so many levies which today add up, to almost, 10 or 12, which defeats the rationalization that was done, in the past.
To what impact is this now, perhaps from the figures you're seeing and per your own analysis, maybe having on the economic businesses in Ghanaians at large?
No, obviously there is a serious, either businesses are just decamping, right, because of the tax regime, or they are finding ways and means of dodging the tax. Even under the VAT, it used to be said, and that is the training which is often given to, you go to a restaurant, do you want a VAT invoice? You don't want a VAT invoice. If you don't want the VAT invoice, they don't add it. They don't account for it, right? And that's because it is at the last end, right? In between, among businesses, that game is not played. Why? Because if you waive the tax, you can't claim it as input tax credit or as refund. That's why we say the VAT is self-policing, because the sales invoice I'm giving you to show to GRA that I collected the tax, right, becomes your purchase invoice, which you have to show, to GRA when they come, that you have a right and that you pay the tax to deduct the input tax, or claim a refund. So the system itself becomes self-policing, right? So the issue of this explains, you ask a very important question. Why are we not increasing revenue? Obviously, the tax has become complex, difficult, to calculate and to do. But more importantly, when you begin to introduce punitive taxes, taxpayers find ways and means, of evading and avoiding the tax. So if you had a simplified tax regime, it's better, and compliance increases. And the evidence is that if you look at our tax to GDP ratio, well, until recently, as GRA is claiming, the highest point at which, revenue was collected was 2015, as a percentage of GDP, no nominal terms.
So the NPP government since 2017 have not been able to increase tax revenue to GDP compared to 2015?
No, because remember, a lot of rationalization, apart from the ERP era, I spoke about two episodes. Remember when Professor Mills became president, we created a GRA, right? Then we merged the VAT service and the income tax, IRS, known at the time, to form the domestic tax division of GRA. And then all the administrative units were put together. All the tax laws were revamped, income tax, customs, and the rest, in lieu of what the federal rationalization, which, I'm talking about. And then we had the customs automation, which has not gone ahead to benefit the domestic tax automation, which is now an IMF conditionality, for us to establish and for which the government has asked, for a waiver. So you see that there were these critical reforms that were made, meaning, of the VAT regime. In fact, a new excise act was enacted. The excise used to be derived from the sales tax of VAT and from the Customs Act. A new excise act, was enacted. And, so all this rationalization, one, simplifies administration, simplifies compliance, and therefore you see, compliance increase. But once you make it too complex and distortionary, then business begin to find a way of, lowering their costs.
Let's try and look at some of these taxes individually, and let's talk about the emission.
By the way, before we go on, I wanted to explain that I am not saying that there were not other taxes, right, which were imposed apart from these 4. What we had was, anytime the country had a problem, which is marked by going to the IMF, there were 2 tax instruments that we always associate with IMF programs. The fiscal stabilization levy, which is an additional income tax on businesses that are either doing well even though we are in crisis, or big businesses that can, accommodate the tax. So we call it national stabilization levy or fiscal stabilization levy. Now and then the second one was the temporary import duty, right? So in addition to the expenditure measures, cutting expenditure and the rest, we normally added, these 2 to boost revenue. But the unique thing you will see is that immediately after the IMF program, they are dropped. Right. So we call it counter-cyclical, or we call it, to meet a crisis. Now, apart from the import duty, which was substituted and by another name and others, a temporary import duty, the fiscal stabilization has already just been renamed. That means that since they were imposed for the 2015 program, they've not been removed. So they've become permanent, more or less. And that is why when COVID came, we imposed a COVID levy, right? And COVID levy has also come to stay. So we have also distorted another purpose of bringing in levies, that we are saying we are mindful of not distorting the 4 pillars, but we have a crisis. Let us bring it in. Let us have a sunset clause so that when the crisis is over, crude oil prices fall. They fell to about $35. They began to rise from 2017 to $60, and it went up to $80 or so, by which time you should have taken the tax off. You didn't take it. And that's why when COVID came, we needed another levy, instead of if we had just taken them off when we had more, additional. So that was another, tax policy objective, which was to apply levies where necessary to only specific objectives. And let me mention the last one, ESLA. Because of doomsaw, costs and other, costs to the economy, when the crude oil prices dropped, in 2015, it was thought that was an opportunity to put a levy which would impact transport fares and things, but immediately we had the money which was needed in 3 to 5 years to pay off the IPPs and others who we owe. And the first one was done with VRA, then we'll take off the tax. Again, we know ESLA exists today. It was collateralized. The money was not applied, for the purpose, and therefore it has also become a permanent, levy competing with the permanent tax structures. The question is, how were past governments from Rawlings until now able to cope with this tax structure? The main addition to the structure I mentioned up to the Mills administration and ESLA, which was a communication service tax, which was imposed during the CCNC J-Kufuor. But the purpose, it went to youth, NYEP. And one would have thought that it should be treated like get fund and the rest, and then, full credit or refund given, right? So, this whole thing that my crisis is more superior or bigger than yours and all that, it is because we have not, we paid lip service when we had 3 additional oil fields to have, taken off, these, levies, so that at the appropriate time we would have brought it in, instead of, say, the COVID levy would have brought in the fiscal stabilization or national stabilization levy. Again, we had gotten used to relying on these taxes that were meant to be temporary in meeting our bloated expenditure.
So what I'm getting from you then is that, so a temporary levy which was supposed to help a particular event has now become the order of the day in raising revenue, and that government has become so dependent that it cannot do without it?
Government can do without it or rationalize it, to use the word again, but over a period of time, which is what, His Excellency, President Mahama has been saying, that we should look at expenditure comprehensively, and we should look at, the tax regimes and rationalize them, again, as they used to be.
Do you think that Ghanaians are angry enough? I mean, the VAT days and even the later days of the Mahama administration, the sort of opposition to certain taxes that were attempted to be imposed, and the kind of reactions that we are getting now?
Well, in a sense, I think we should put what happened in a context. Even when we were doing, crude oil prices fell, right? As it was crude oil prices because it had become the third major commodity, but as we used to do with falling prices of cocoa or gold, and we had to bring in temporary taxes, we knew the serious effects of, the breakage in the, the damaging of the pipeline from Nigeria, which disrupted, power, gas supply, and therefore power, and VRA and others had to rely, on, instead of gas, on other means to generate. This is something which has been happening. But then the impression was created as if this had never happened, lifted to a crescendo. And, the truth is in one tax, ESLA, which was called a nuisance tax, which today, apart from taking even the loan we took to pay the IPPs and to pay VRA and the rest, right? Those who went through that difficult era, what we did was we said, if you went to a bank to borrow, right, to generate power, and government could not pay you the subsidy because government incomes itself were low, then now that we have imposed a tax, which is called ESLA, we brought VRA and the banks from which they borrowed to the table. And we said, if you borrowed, then we are not going to, this is not free money for you. It is money which should be used to pay the debt. And indirectly through that, it started to improve the non-performing loan situation of the banks. This is why we disagree, with the big bank. That would cause the money was there. And in fact, both the vice president and the president admitted in Washington, D.C., before the collateralization, that there was enough money in ESLA to pay the 2.2 billion US dollars. That's how powerful ESLA was. In fact, today as we speak, ESLA has brought in nearly 40 billion Ghana cedis, right? So you can compare. Even if we use 21 billion, as we are told, or 15 billion, for the cleanup costs and the rest, why didn't we use ESLA to pay? So the balance will be, why did we have to say we went to borrow another money, which has today become part of the debt exchange? ESLA has become part of the debt exchange. What happened, to the collateralized amount? You would have thought that when you collateralize, you have a bulk amount of money to even pay, those debts, more quickly. But it wasn't done. So I do understand, the extreme distortion that took place, about the intentions of the President Mahama regime, even the money that was being put aside, apart from the taxes. We said you cannot always rely on taxes to meet emergencies. So let us put part of the oil money aside in the stabilization fund. You know that when COVID came, the first money that was withdrawn, 250 million, was money which we had left in the stabilization fund as a buffer, so that the next time there's a crisis like COVID, we don't impose higher temporary taxes. Because in good times, you put money aside, right? So we were adding to the things that would balance the economy, better, right? That was from one oil field. The 550 million or about 350 million that we use, for example, put aside to pay down, the first sovereign bond, right, which the MPP used another 200 to pay down, was another, instruments, putting money aside to do. In spite of 3 oil fields, all of these were stopped.
Finally, so these distortions and away from the rationalization have created a lot of taxes. There.
So much distortion about the intention and the rationale, for these that, well, the opportunity was given and we are where we are today.
Before I ask my final question, so you've made a point that the emission levy, for instance, there's duplicity of it. But why would government be doing this? Is it is it an IMF conditionality or inherently?
No, the government has considered that it's an IMF conditionality, in addition to the other taxes, in there. And that is because if you read the IMF document, you see that most of the measures that the government promised, to use to do a turnaround of the economy are based on tax. And that is because, the flagship expenditure policies, we do not want to touch them. Right? So the fund, you wouldn't see any expenditure measure of substance. So the spending level...
So you're being forced to pay a lot now because government doesn't want to touch flagship programs like 1D, 1F, free SHS, and the rest.
Basically, you can tell me, whether any of these are in the discussion today. At the Century Forum, which was convened to discuss, even after the Century Forum, the decision to suspend some construction of schools, free SHS, right? Rather that when we have the 3 oil fields, we can continue, which was seriously distorted as, mismanagement. But now today, we see the schools are in the bushes and things, and have not been utilized. The same as hospitals, and the rest. So, yes, what is happening is that as you add more taxes, and it's known from time immemorial that when you increase taxes, the burden, that's why you talk about it, burden of the tax becomes heavy, and people find ways and means of dodging it, or they just take themselves out of the system.
Is it fair to say that the government has been on a deceptive agenda because for all these taxes, they've outlined purposes for these taxes, but it appears to be that they just want to raise revenue to fix the loophole that we have?
Well, in a sense, yes, because if there's a levy which was brought in, let's use one example, sanitation. Has sanitation improved? No, because it's going into a pot, which is paying wages and salaries because of the bloating, of the public sector, wages which was said to be unsustainable, and today some of the, NAPCO employees and the rest are still not, being paid. Pensions are not being paid. We are seeing strikes and all that, right? Some of these things happen in the past because anytime there's a constraint, with government, governments had it tough, and sometimes that's when you go into programs. Even we started what we call the homegrown, policy to try and do our own corrections from all the measures, which I mentioned, because crises are inevitable. But another point we have not made is that, which is very important, is that because we keep making the temporary taxes, more and more permanent, we would not be prepared for the next crisis.
That's a bold statement.
Of course, crises are inevitable. You can't manage an economy, continuously for 4 years without one crisis or the other. I can go back to the Rawlings administration, bushfires, droughts, or heavy rains. Even heavy rains are usually not a blessing.
Crises are bound to happen. But
are bound to happen.
You're saying despite our experience with COVID-19, Ghana will not be ready with this practice of maintaining temporary taxes, will not be ready for it.
Well, we could impose another, like the COVID, in addition to the fiscal stabilization and to the renamed temporary import duty and whatever. It wasn't enough. We said that we got, billions to resolve COVID. We didn't.
That's Seth Tekbe. He was Minister of Finance in the John Mahama government, speaking to City News' Hansin Ajiman. And that would be it for Point Blank tonight on Eyewitness News. My name is Umar Rusanda Amadou. Production by Kobna Wilson, Beverly London, and Sami Wiafe. Technical support from Daniel Squashi. New media support from Edwin Kwakofi. We return tomorrow at 17:30 GMT. Thank you for listening. Up next is Footprint with Samuel Atamensa. Good night.